Welcome to the Bulldog Bites Lunchtime interviews. Today we have a very special guest, Amber Haukedahl. Amber is just as means of introduction, Amber is a graduate of the University of Redlands. She graduated in 2006, after which she traveled the United States teaching environmental studies to education to urban youth, children with special needs, and others. After completing 2 terms with AmeriCorps, Amber went on to earn a graduate degree, a master's from Antioch University in conservation biology. Then she began managing biological field stations in South America and Africa. When she returned to the United States, Amber decided to start Minnesota's first zero-waste store, Tare Market, in April of 2019. The mission of Tare Market is to fight climate change by providing people with access to plastic-free and package-free goods. Amber lives in Minnesota with her husband, her daughter, and her chocolate lab. Welcome, Amber.
Thanks, Wendy. Thank you for that really nice introduction.
Hey. And I forgot, I am Wendy McIntyre, professor in environmental studies at the University of Redlands, and Amber's a graduate of our program. So Amber, tell me a little bit about working for AmeriCorps, some of the challenges and some of the places that you went in those 2 terms.
Yeah, so I elected to do my AmeriCorps terms in the same location for 2 years because I just really loved where I was. So I worked as a environmental education facilitator, like you mentioned, for kids with disabilities, urban youth, and special needs adults in upstate New York at a camp called Camp Ramapo. And I was there for 2 full years, and I lived on site and taught environmental education to those groups, as well as did some outdoor adventure things like canoe trips in upstate New York, overnight backpacking trips locally in the Catskills, kind of things like that. And I loved that experience so much. It was really hands-on, really interactive. I really developed a lot of great relationships with the students that I worked with. And a lot of them were in programs that would come back multiple times a year. So it was always great to connect and see them. The hardest thing, some of the difficult things was, being someone who works for AmeriCorps, you get a really small stipend, maybe $60 a week for food, and they provide living arrangements, but that's about it. So you're not exactly able to save any money. So I was in this situation where I was loving what I was doing, but I couldn't save any money for the future. I couldn't really save to eventually get an apartment or even get a car or anything like that. So that was a struggle. I couldn't afford health insurance, but I loved what I did, so it all seemed worth it. And when you're 23, it's like, who needs health insurance? I'm fine. I'm never going to get sick. So it didn't stop me from continuing to do that work, but I did present some challenges for me. But overall, it was a fantastic experience, and it allowed me to earn 2 grants that I could put towards education. So as an AmeriCorps member, you can earn grants that you can put towards either like a traditional educational program, like a graduate school or undergrad, but also either community programs or other forms of education, online education that you're interested in. So I was able to get a few $1,000s to put towards my graduate degree, which was really helpful.
That's great. Yeah. And then your graduate degree led into work overseas. You're quite the traveler. What are some of the countries that you set up biological field stations? And tell me a little bit more about that work.
Sure. And I have to blame Redlands totally for my desire to do work abroad, because May term was my favorite thing. It was one of the reasons I went to Redlands, and I participated in a travel program 3 out of the 4 years. And the only reason I didn't do it all 4 years is because I was already studying abroad for a full semester for that 3rd year, my junior year. So I totally hold Redlands accountable for my wanderlust. And yeah, after doing my AmeriCorps positions, I really loved the education, but I also missed the biological everyday data collection that I had trained to do while I was at Redlands. So that's why I decided to go back to graduate school. And Antioch University, New England is an environmental only graduate school. So I was surrounded by other people who were either interested in conservation biology or environmental education, or they were getting their degree as a science teacher. So it was just phenomenal to be surrounded by people who all were interested in science. And while I was there, I developed the opportunity to do an internship in South America. I had kind of continued my passion of education and was working with a local group out of Boston to do environmental education, and they would take students abroad for month-long environmental education and community service trips to developing countries. So I got a job leading a trip to Ecuador for a summer while I was at Antioch University, New England. And while I was there, I met a scientist who was working on a small cat camera trapping project in the Cloud Forest Reserve outside of Quito, the capital of Ecuador. And so he invited me to come be an intern for a summer. And that was a fantastic opportunity to learn about camera trapping, which is where you put cameras in different areas of this reserve so we could track the population and the migration of these endangered cats called margays and oncillas that were living in the cloud forest that there was very little data on. And we also got to do a bird study while we were there. And we did some studies on different kinds of moths and bats that were in the area, and also did a carbon sequestration study to study the forest and the health of that forest. And while I was there, he had the opportunity to invite students and adults through a citizen science program called the Earthwatch Institute. And so the following year, they needed someone to run those programs. So after my internship ended, he said, hey, we have this opportunity to bring in citizen science volunteers. Would you like to come back and be a bigger part of this biological field station next year? So the following summer, I went back and I ran that program with the help of other staff. And that was just a great experience to lead the camera trapping study, but then also to work again with people and teach them how to collect scientific data and teach them about the local and natural flora and fauna in Ecuador. And then when I went back to Antioch University, I volunteered with a group called Save the Elephants, which was always a group that I loved and was really passionate about ever since I was a child. And the principal investigator in charge of that group had a field station in Samburu, Kenya, which is in the middle of Kenya, and asked me if I would be interested in helping to run that field station to collect data on the effects of poaching on elephants in that reserve, in Samburu Reserve, as well as to track the migration of elephants through there as they started to develop corridors for animals to travel safely from one area of the reserve to the other to try to avoid poachers and community conflict. And so I spent about 6 months after my graduate degree finished in Africa, and that's where I actually did my thesis. So I gathered a bunch of data and did a bunch of different projects, oversaw the field station, and then when I was able to take a breath from that and get good internet, because that wasn't exactly available in the field station, I wrote my capstone for my graduate degree on the effects of poaching on elephants in Samburu Reserve in Kenya. So I kind of bounced around to a lot of different places and kind of had some great opportunities come from some relationships that I made throughout my time at Antioch University. And those were both really wonderful experiences.
Wow, that's great. And now you're a businesswoman. So what led to your interest in zero waste from this conservation biology background? And tell us more about Tare Market.
Sure. So I came back from living abroad to Minnesota because my then boyfriend, now husband, is from here. And we decided California was a little bit too expensive. So we were going to try to live in Minnesota where he's from. And I really struggled to find my passion here in Minnesota. There weren't elephants here. There weren't camera trapping projects going on for small cats. So I became an environmental consultant, which was what all my friends were doing. And I really didn't find much value in that for myself. Like, nope, not a lot of personal growth. I wasn't very passionate about it. And I saw an ad in a community education newsletter for a class called Zero Waste Grocery Shopping. And I had never heard of the term zero waste before. And I went to this class really naive because not only had I not heard of the term, I was also very confident that I was doing everything I can as an environmentalist to live really sustainably. So I thought, oh, I recycle everything I can. I'm a vegetarian. I bike everywhere possible. So I'm not going to learn anything from this class. And I was just astonished to learn about the ramifications of our waste, how every toothbrush we've ever used in our entire life is sitting in a landfill, not decomposing, how the average plastic bag is used for 12 minutes, but takes over 1,000 years to break down in a landfill. And then it becomes microplastics, which infiltrate our water and our air and our soil. And so I just learned so much about our waste and how it not only affects our local community, but our global community. And I decided that I really wanted to do something to make a difference. Because the work I'd been doing abroad and the work that I felt like I'd been prepared to do at Redlands was all because I wanted to make a positive change in the world. But I really hadn't found out how to do that yet until I discovered the zero waste movement. And then I thought, this is something I can really contribute to my local community, and then that'll have a global ripple, and it'll positively affect change globally. So I started talking to a lot of people in my community and realized I wasn't the only one who was interested in living more sustainably. And that a lot of people were really frustrated because though the co-ops in town are fantastic, there weren't resources for people to purchase things locally. So if you wanted compostable dental floss or a bar shampoo, you had to order it on Amazon, which then you would be ordering a zero waste product, but it would come in a huge box with all this plastic, and it would just really defeat the purpose. And so people were looking for local options, organic options for items that they could use in their everyday life that would help them create less waste. So just through communication and talking to people at fairs, at events, I realized there was a business opportunity here, because if I was looking for items, I bet other people were looking for items as well. And so I decided to start Tare Market, Minnesota's first zero waste store, on Earth Day of 2019. And so we've been in business just over a year.
Wow, that's great. What are some of your more popular items at Tare Market?
Yeah, so some of our most popular items are our health and beauty products. So people really love our bar shampoo and conditioner. They're plastic free, so it's basically dehydrated shampoo or conditioner. It comes in a solid bar, and you can rub it on your head. And once you're in the shower, you can rub it in your hands first and then rub the product through your hair. And it's locally made here in Minneapolis. It's high-end salon quality ingredients, so people really think it's a really nice product. And it's organic and gluten-free and vegan. And so that's one of our most popular products. People also really like to refill items that they have. So they'll take a lotion bottle from home or an olive oil bottle from home, and they'll bring it into the store and refill it with those items that we have in the store. So anything that we have available for refill is also extremely popular. And then we have a refillable makeup line. So you can get a compact with product in it, and it has a little tin in there that's recyclable, and you can use the product. And then once it's done, you recycle the tin, but then you can get a refill for that whole compact, so that you don't need to get rid of your whole compact. You just get rid of that little piece, which is recyclable, and then you can get a refill. So innovative programs like that with the makeup are really, really popular with our community.
That's great. So what are some things that we could do to be more zero waste community?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and everyone's different, and everyone's budget is different, and their family life is different. So people really have to think about what is going to work for them in their situation. But anyone who's interested in living more sustainably, I would definitely recommend the very first thing you do, which is so fun and exciting, is to look through your trash. So gather up your trash, gather up your recycle bin too, and take a look and see what's actually in there. And that will tell you a lot about where you're creating waste, and then how you can avoid that waste in the future. So when I was interested in going zero waste after I attended this community class, I went through my trash and I realized that about 80% of my waste was plastic packaging from food. So I was going to the grocery store and I was buying a bag of apples in a plastic bag, or I was buying lettuce in a plastic bag. When I started to realize that, and I went back to the same exact grocery store, I realized that there were loose apples right next to the apples that were in the plastic bag. And I could bring my own reusable bag that I made out of a t-shirt from my house. And I could use that instead. And I would avoid then the plastic and bringing that home and throwing that away. So for me, that made a huge difference. So I would recommend anyone who's interested in living zero waste, the first thing I would do would be to conduct a trash audit in your home to see where you're creating waste. And then think about each item that you have in your trash can. Is there an alternative item that I can purchase that doesn't have any waste associated with it?
That's great. Okay, let's go back to Redlands a little bit. How was your student experience at Redlands? What were some of your favorite classes and favorite professors? And what were some things that you were involved in on campus?
I loved going to school at Redlands. I mean, it was such a fun experience and a really great time. I really loved the environmental studies department. I got obviously, as you mentioned, my degree in environmental studies. I believe my senior year was when the environmental studies department had their new building open. So that was something really exciting to be able to have my senior year, to be able to take classes in that space. As I mentioned, I love to travel, so I really took advantage of the May terms. So I took a class with you, the Biogeography of Australia and New Zealand, I believe it was called. And that was one of my favorite classes, being able to spend 2 weeks in Australia and then 2 weeks in New Zealand. That was really fun. I think we had 12 students on that trip, all women. It was really a great time. I learned so much. I still remember when you assigned each of us a bird and to study, and I got the Kia, which is, I think, the only low alpine parrot. I can't believe I remember this. And then we saw one while we were traveling, and of course it was like on the side of the road, and I went up to it and it took my pen or something. I mean, it was just like mischievous bird. So I mean, things like that just stuck with me. I love that. And then I was lucky enough to take a class with Monty Hempel, that we went to Palau and we studied the marine biology and coral reefs and the ecosystems of that community, and that was really, really incredible. And I was very lucky that my senior year as well, outdoor programs was started by another student who created that program as a capstone for her Johnston Center studies education. And so I came back from studying abroad to find this amazing outdoor programs that connected students to the outdoors. And I did my wilderness first responder through that, through outdoor programs, and I did a few kayaking trips through those, and then some spring break backpacking trips as well out in Northern California. So that was an amazing place to find friends, and I was so happy to be a part of that experience. So yeah, I think those would be some of my favorite classes.
That's great. What kind of advice would you give to students in environmental studies or recent graduates of the program, given your experiences, your varied experiences?
Yeah, I mean, my path was all over the place. I was trying to just find my way. I did education, I did field research, I moved all over the United States, I lived abroad. Now I ended up in Minnesota, out of all places, being from California. Everyone thinks I'm so weird. And I wouldn't have got to where I am, which is, I think, exactly where I need to be, had I not tried a bunch of different things. And so what I would say to graduates, recent graduates and current students is, don't put so much pressure on yourself to find your career or your path right out of school. If you want to try different things and see what makes you happy, see what you're passionate about, I think that's great, because it gives you the opportunity to explore, but not necessarily feel like if this doesn't work out, I failed. Because it's not about failing, it's about finding what makes you happy in life and where you're excited to be and show up every day. And so I would just say, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Try different things, and eventually you'll get to where exactly you want to be.
Okay, great. So how have you been doing in this era of pandemic and great social unrest? How is Tare Market doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a difficult time to be a small business owner, I think, anywhere in the United States. And it's an incredibly difficult time to be one in Minneapolis. So George Floyd was murdered here just over 2 weeks ago now. And so this community especially has been incredibly rocked by that tragedy and then the civil unrest and the looting and rioting that's followed. So we had almost a full week where we were totally closed. Most of the businesses in town were boarded up. We were trying to provide resources to the community by donating food, donating money to rebuild certain areas of the city that were totally decimated by looting and rioting and fires and things like that. So we're just now kind of on the other end of that. We're reopened. We're doing a community appreciation sale right now where we're raising money from every sale to donate to an area of the city that was hit particularly hard by fires and looting and riots. And we're all kind of rebuilding and recovering. I think it's going to be a long road for businesses to recover as a result of the pandemic, because even us, we're a small business. We've got 4 staff members and we're about 1,000 square feet. We can still only have, as mandated by our governor, 10 people in our store at any time. So we're constantly having to ask people to wait. We're having to implement new programs that we didn't have before, like curbside pickup. For some of our items. And so we're trying to keep up with the technology and make that easier for customers. So it's a challenge. It's never boring, that's for sure. There's always something to do and always a way to improve. But I always come back to our mission, which you mentioned, which is to fight climate change by providing people with access to package-free and plastic-free goods. And as long as we can continue to do that, then I consider this business a success. Hopefully we can stay in business and continue to serve our community. If we end up having to close in a year or 2 years because we just can't make it through, that's okay. We did the best we could. But you know, it's a lot of effort right now, but it's also a lot of reward. Community members are really excited. We're open. We get lots of really great messages from our customers and community saying like, thanks for existing, thanks for being here. So that's really strong motivation to keep pushing and keep developing new strategies to stay open and stay viable as a business.
That's great. Lots of challenges out there for you.
That's right.
Okay. Well, anything else about Tare Market that you'd like to add? You have a website, right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, our website is thetaremarket.com, and we're also on Instagram as Tare Market. And we have on our shelves 100 shelf-stable bulk food items for customers to come and refill, as well as kind of zero waste swaps, which I mentioned, some of like the shampoo bars, which are great products for people who are looking to live a little bit more sustainably. And if anyone out there is interested in zero waste and wants to find out more, just shoot me an email via our website. I'd be happy to share our resources with you. And there's some great YouTube videos you can watch if you're interested in learning more about zero waste. Lauren Singer is a fantastic resource. You can just type in Lauren Singer into YouTube and her stuff will come up. And then Bea Johnson is another wonderful person who you can watch a bunch of YouTube videos on, and she'll explain to you kind of how to shop zero waste and how to move your household towards more sustainable products and things like that. So there's some great resources out there for people who want to learn and transition their home.
Okay. Well, that's all great, Amber. And I guess we'll wrap up, and thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity.